Hi, this is Crafty Creatures here with our butterfly painting. So this is what the finished painting looks like, including our little 3D butterfly. You're going to need your canvas. You need a pencil, our paintbrushes, and our paint colors. So these are the colors here that we're going to be using. You're also going to want something to wash your brushes in, and even some paper towel just to dry them off. So we're going to start off with drawing the stem of our flower. So we want to leave it about as thick as a pencil, maybe a little thicker. And then we're going to want to add in some leaves. So I like to add 2 or 3. It just gives a nice amount. And we can have them with a little bit of curves, little bends, as long as there's a couple of them and you want them to end with a point. Now, when it comes to our flower, we can be a bit creative, so we can make them big petals, small petals, rounded petals, pointed petals. I started to draw my petals here and I decided I wanted to go a little bit bigger and a little bit more of a point. So I drew my little circle in the middle and then I drew my petals around it. I did 5 petals. You can do as many as you'd like. There's all sorts of beautiful flowers out there. So that's it for our drawing steps. So we're going to go ahead and onto our painting. So next we're going to start painting. So we're going to want to get a bunch of yellow and white, equal amounts of both. I started off with a little bit too little here, so I had to mix some more. And the reason we want to mix these two together is we want to soften that yellow up a bit. Right now it's really bright. We want to soften it down to about the color of the inside of a banana. And what we're going to do is we're going to start kind of making a nice circle around our flower. You can make it a bit bigger, you can make it a bit smaller. I like to have it big enough that none of my petals are quite touching. Then we're going to go in and we're going to stick with a small brush for now. And we're going to get nice and close to the edges of each petal. This is why we use the small brush. It makes it easier to not go over the edges. Again, you can see that I ran out and I had to mix up some more. Now as we paint, we want to paint nice and smooth. This is sped up a bit, so my hand's moving a lot faster. We want to smooth that paint out. Smooth paint dries a lot better than globby paint, and it just makes a nicer finish. You can also see that as I'm going around the edges of each petal, I really slow down my hand. This makes it a lot easier to control, a lot less chances of going over those pencil lines. And again, make sure you smooth out any big lumps and globs of paint. This will just help it to dry better. Next, we don't even need to clean our brush for this step. We're going to get a bit of orange and we're going to mix it into some of our yellow mix. This makes a nice soft orange peachy color that we're going to use to make an outline around this circle. We want to do all of this with our little brush because it's a lot easier to control our mixing. And we want this stripe to be fairly thin. Now for a special trick, we're going to clean and dry our brush. Make sure it's nice and clean. And we're going to use this clean brush to kind of smooth out the middle where the two colors meet. This is called wet on wet blending, so this is just going to make that nice ombre effect. Next, we're going to take a bit more orange and a little bit of pink and mix it into our mix. We should have a little bit left, even if it's not very much. You don't need a ton of color for this step. And same thing here, we're just going to outline that previous lighter orange circle, kind of making a bunch of rings. And again, we're going to wash and mostly dry off that brush, and we're going to blend the two colors together. See how I'm dragging my brush right through where the two edges meet, and it just softens up that line that forms between them. Now for this step, we're going to want to use both paintbrushes. We're going to start off with our small brush because we're going to move on to our pink. Now we don't need to do any mix. I like to outline how much pink I'm going to add. If you really like pink, you might want to make your pink circle bigger. If you'd rather see more of the purple, you're going to want to leave a bit more space. Sketching it out just helps us to see where it's going to go kind of behind these leaves and these stems. And it gives us a good idea of how much pink we're going to have on there. We do want the pink to be a nice big circle though. Again, we're going to go nice and slow around those edges of our leaves and our stem. I used my small brush here to fill in any spaces that were pretty small. So kind of where my leaf gets pretty close to my yellow and orange, I've kind of gone in there with a small brush. And then I've left the rest. I've got that little bit under that other leaf. It's a lot easier to control the small brush than it is the big brush. And we can get nice and close to our pencil line without going over with that small brush. Just like with our other steps though, we do want to make sure our paint is nice and smooth. So as you go along, try to smooth out any big globs you have. So now we can set that little brush aside and start on with the big brush, filling in all that space. Now with our big brush, it's especially important that we smooth that paint out. That big brush can be a little bit of a paint thief, so we want to make sure we're using all the paint that's in that bristles. And really taking our time smoothing the paint out is going to help with that. Now that all of our pink is filled in, we're going to take that clean, dry brush, and again, we're going to blend that orange and that pink together. It's going to be a little bit more subtle than the previous colors, and it's just going to help soften everything. It's going to give us that beautiful glow that we're looking for. So next we're going to mix equal parts pink and our lovely light purple together. This is going to create a nice in-between shade, not quite pink, not quite purple. We're going to make a ring that's not as wide as our pink. We want to leave a little space left on our sky for our regular purple. So for this step, I'm mostly just going to use that small brush, especially as I try to get between all these narrow gaps here. Just like with our other colors, I'm going to spread it out nice and smooth. Once we finish filling it in, we're going to blend these two together, and then we're going to move on to filling in the rest of that background space with our regular purple. Now the purple can be a little bit thicker than the other colors, so definitely make sure to smooth it out really, really good. Some colors are just thicker than others. Now some of these spots you may want to use your big brush. Because I left a bit more space for my pink, I'm going to mostly just use my small brush, especially around the leaves, because I don't have that much space I need to fill in. So make sure to get the top corners here. And that last little bit of the sky. Everything left should just be our leaves, our stem, and our flower. So before we move on to our flower, we do want to make sure to blend. So we're just going to blend that little bit of purple here. This is a really good trick for painting sunsets, sunrises. Anytime you want to change from one color to another, this blending effect is really, really useful. Now I chose to use my mixed pinky orange for the center of the flower. You can use the regular orange if you'd like, or even the regular yellow. You have a lot of choices. I like to mix a bit of white and pink together to make a softer pink for the petals. This lets me go in and do some shading on top. To make a soft pink, you're going to mix mostly white to little bits of pink till you get the shade that you want. It's a lot easier to make a light color darker than it is to make a dark color lighter. So I'm going to paint in all my petals nice and smooth. Again, I'm going very slow on my edges. This is going to help me keep everything nice and crisp and makes it easier to not accidentally go over my lines. If you go over your lines a little bit, that's okay, it does happen. What I like to do is I like to even it out to make it look like it's not an accident but on purpose. So maybe one part of your petal might be a little wider than you first drew it, but that's okay. As long as it looks nice and even, no one's really going to notice. So now we're going to fill in the green. So our green is a little bit thicker, just like our purple, so we do want to make sure we spread it really good and smooth. And as you can see, I'm still going nice and slow along my edges, especially near the points. This keeps that line really, really sharp. It just makes it look nice and tidy. Now our stem can be a little bit trickier because it is thinner. Depending on how thick or thin you made your stem, try to just use the end of your brush and try not to press down too hard. That's going to keep all those bristles together in a nice point. It's going to make it easier to just fill in a little bit. As we're working with across our leaves, we want to make sure we're not leaving any white gaps. This just helps make our painting look really nice and finished. If we leave little patches of white, it's going to look like it's not quite done yet. So as a bonus, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, I like to use my regular pink for some shading. I like to do this while my lighter pink is still kind of wet, just so we get a little bit of blending happening. So I like to add some along the points of my petals and kind of where two petals meet, and a little bit in the middle. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, it just adds a little bit extra pop to our flower. If you want, you could even do this with your pink and purple mix, or even purple for a kind of different looking flower, depending on what kind of flower vibes you're looking for. Just make sure you keep it consistent across each petal so they all look like they're part of the same flower. So now our painting is almost done. We do have our butterflies to add. So the best things you can use for the butterflies is marker or pencil crayon. We're going to want to cover the whole front side and a bit of the underside because we will see it. Once you're finished coloring them, you're going to want to fold it down the middle to make a nice crease. And this is where we're going to add a nice line of glue. I recommend deciding where you're going to place your butterfly before you put the glue on, but I knew really confidently where I was going to place mine. So we just want the glue along the underside of that crease, that way those wings will stick up and be nice and fluttery. And there's our finished butterfly painting. Thanks for painting with us today. Bye-bye.